The burgundy lipstick stain on my husband's crisp white collar was like finding a loaded gun in our bedroom drawer. There it was, mocking me from across our granite kitchen island as Ryan fumbled with his briefcase, completely oblivious to the evidence smeared across his shirt. 9 years of marriage, 3 years of building his real estate empire together. And this is how I discover that my life has been a carefully constructed lie. I'm Emma Rodriguez, and until this moment, I thought I was living the American dream in our sprawling Westlake home here in Austin, Texas. At 34, I'd built a successful marketing consultancy from absolutely nothing, transforming local businesses into powerhouses with campaigns that made competitors weep with envy. My husband Ryan was the golden boy of Pinnacle Realty, his handsome face plastered on billboards across I-35, selling million-dollar dreams to anyone willing to believe in Texas luxury living. We were supposed to be the power couple everyone envied, the marketing genius and the real estate king, building an empire together in one of America's fastest-growing cities. I'd spent the last 3 years pouring my creative soul into his business, crafting the marketing strategies that turned him from just another agent into Austin's most recognizable real estate brand. Every social media campaign, every billboard design, every client presentation that sealed those massive deals carried my fingerprints. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. But as I stared at that burgundy smear, watching my husband of nearly a decade avoid my eyes while he loosened, the very tie that would unravel our entire life together, I realized that while I'd been busy building his dreams, he'd been busy building a completely different life with someone else. The lipstick wasn't mine. I've never worn burgundy in my entire life. My signature color has always been classic red, a power shade that matches my personality and my business aesthetic. This burgundy was different, expensive looking, the kind of color that screams sophistication and seduction. The kind of color a young woman might wear to impress an older, successful man. Ryan walked through our front door that evening like he had 1,000 times before, his confident stride carrying him across the marble entryway we'd personally selected from a quarry in Carrara, Italy. His smile was practiced and charming, the same million-dollar expression that had sold countless homes and convinced me to trust him with my heart, my business, and my future. He had no idea that in the next 60 seconds, his perfectly constructed world was about to crumble like a house of cards in a Texas thunderstorm. The lipstick discovery happened on a Tuesday evening in October, when Austin's oppressive summer heat had finally given way to the kind of crisp autumn air that makes you believe in new beginnings. I'd been working late in my home office, finalizing a rebranding campaign for a boutique hotel downtown, when I heard Ryan's BMW pull into our circular driveway. The sound of his car door slamming echoed through our quiet neighborhood, where houses sit on acre lots and neighbors respect each other's privacy. I'd been expecting him home hours earlier. He'd texted around 3 that afternoon, claiming he was showing properties to out-of-town investors and might be late for dinner. Nothing unusual there. Ryan's schedule had become increasingly unpredictable. Over the past few months, with more evening appointments, weekend showings, and mysterious client dinners that somehow never resulted in any new listings I could help market. As the front door opened, I heard him drop his keys in the ceramic bowl we'd bought during our honeymoon in Santorini, back when we still believed in forever. His footsteps moved across the hardwood floors with the confident rhythm of a man who owned his world, who had everything under control. I emerged from my office to greet him, ready to ask about his day and share the exciting news about landing the hotel account. That's when I saw it. The collar of his white dress shirt, slightly wrinkled from where a tie had been loosened and retightened, bore a smudge of color that made my stomach drop to my toes. Burgundy lipstick. Not just a trace, but a definitive mark, like someone had pressed their lips against his collar in a moment of passion or carelessness. The stain was fresh, vibrant, impossible to mistake for anything innocent. Ryan Rodriguez stood in our entryway, 36 years old and devastatingly handsome in the way that sells real estate and breaks hearts. His dark hair was perfectly styled despite the long day, his hazel eyes still bright with the energy that had first attracted me at a charity gala 9 years ago. He wore his success like an expensive cologne, subtle but impossible to ignore. He was also wearing evidence of someone else's affection on his collar, and he had absolutely no idea I could see it. My mind immediately began cataloging everything that was wrong with this picture. Ryan was meticulous about his appearance, the kind of man who checked himself in every reflective surface he passed. He paid more for his shirts than most people spent on rent, and he treated them like investments. The idea that he would walk into our home wearing such obvious evidence of infidelity suggested either incredible carelessness or stunning arrogance. I stood there in our kitchen, wearing the yoga pants and oversized sweater that had become my work-from-home uniform, staring at my husband while my heart hammered against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. 9 years of marriage had taught me to read Ryan's moods, his expressions, his tells. But in this moment, he looked exactly like he always did after a successful day at the office, pleased with himself, confident, and completely convinced that his world was exactly as it should be. The burgundy lipstick told a different story entirely. I thought about the wife I'd been for nearly a decade, the woman who'd supported his career ambitions, who'd moved to Austin when he got the opportunity at Pinnacle Realty, who'd restructured her entire business to complement his goals. I'd been the perfect partner, the ideal teammate, the woman who made his success possible while building her own empire in the shadows. Emma Rodriguez, marketing executive extraordinaire, had spent 3 years creating the brand that made Ryan Rodriguez a household name in Austin real estate. My campaigns had generated millions in sales for his team. My strategies had earned him recognition as Austin's top luxury home specialist 3 years running. My creativity had transformed him from another handsome guy in a suit into the face of upscale Texas living. And while I'd been busy making him famous, he'd apparently been busy making someone else very happy. The woman who'd left that burgundy mark on his collar wasn't just a random encounter. This had the hallmarks of something ongoing, something intimate, something that required the kind of access that came with trust and familiarity. Someone had kissed my husband's collar, either in a moment of passion or as a territorial marking, and he'd been careless enough to come home wearing the evidence. I felt the familiar surge of analytical thinking that had made me successful in marketing. When faced with a problem, my brain automatically shifted into strategic mode, cataloging information, identifying patterns, and developing action plans. It was the same mental process I used when a client came to me with a damaged reputation or a failing brand image. The difference was that this time, the damaged brand was my marriage, and the failing image was my life. Ryan moved through our kitchen with the casual confidence of a man who believed he was still in control of his narrative. He loosened his tie completely, that same burgundy-stained tie that would become the catalyst for everything that followed, and draped it over one of our leather bar stools. The gesture was so routine, so perfectly normal, that for a split second I wondered if I was imagining things. But the evidence was right there, impossible to deny or explain away. Burgundy lipstick on white fabric was like a neon sign advertising betrayal, and my husband was wearing it like a badge of honor he hadn't realized he'd earned. I thought about confronting him immediately, demanding an explanation, forcing him to account for the evidence literally hanging around his neck. But something deeper, something more strategic, held me back. If Ryan was capable of this level of deception, if he was living a double life sophisticated enough to require this kind of careful management, then rushing into confrontation would only give him time to construct better lies. Instead, I smiled at my husband with the same warmth I'd shown him for 9 years of marriage, and I began planning his destruction. The burgundy lipstick wasn't just evidence of Ryan's infidelity. It was proof that he thought I was stupid enough, trusting enough, or simply too busy to notice what was happening right under my nose. He'd grown so comfortable with his deception that he'd become careless. and that carelessness was about to become his downfall. As I watched him move through our home, touching surfaces we'd selected together, sitting on furniture we'd argued about and eventually compromised on, I realized that the man I'd married had been replaced by someone I didn't recognize. This wasn't the Ryan who'd proposed to me on the shores of Lake Travis, promising me a partnership built on honesty and mutual respect. This wasn't the man who'd held my hand during my father's funeral, who'd celebrated every business milestone with genuine pride and enthusiasm. This was a stranger wearing my husband's face, living in my husband's house, and apparently using my husband's success to finance a relationship with someone who wore burgundy lipstick and wasn't careful about leaving evidence behind. The transformation in my thinking was immediate and complete. Emma Rodriguez, the loving wife who'd spent years building her husband's dreams, was gone. In her place stood Emma Rodriguez, the marketing strategist who specialized in reputation management and brand destruction. If Ryan wanted to play games with our marriage and our business partnership, he was about to discover that he'd chosen to compete against someone who understood the rules better than he ever would. The burgundy lipstick had painted a target on my husband's reputation, and I was about to show him just how thoroughly one small mistake could destroy everything he'd worked to build. The story of Ryan and me began 11 years ago at the Austin Children's Charity Gala, one of those black tie events where Austin's elite gathered to write checks and network under the guise of philanthropy. I was 23 then, fresh out, of UT with a communications degree and dreams bigger than my bank account. I'd scraped together enough money to buy a second-hand evening gown and attend the event, hoping to make connections that might help launch my fledgling marketing consultancy. Rodriguez Marketing Solutions existed primarily on business cards and determination at that point. I was operating out of my studio apartment near campus, surviving on ramen noodles and the occasional freelance project designing flyers for local restaurants. My entire business model consisted of cold calls, relentless networking, and an unshakable belief that I could create marketing magic for any client willing to give me a chance. Ryan Rodriguez caught my attention from across the ballroom at the Four Seasons downtown. 25 years old and already making waves at Pinnacle Realty, he had the kind of confidence that drew people like moths to flame. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his tuxedo fit like it had been crafted specifically for his athletic frame, and when he smiled, entire conversations stopped so people could bask in its warmth. He approached me during the silent auction, where I was studying the bidding sheets with the intensity of a scholar examining ancient texts. Not because I could afford to bid on anything, but because I was analyzing the marketing strategies behind each donated item and trying to understand what made people open their wallets for charity. Our first conversation lasted 3 hours. We talked about Austin's growing market, the potential for luxury real estate development, and my theories about emotional marketing and high-end sales. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Ryan was fascinated by my perspective on consumer psychology, and I was captivated by his ambitious vision for transforming Austin's real estate landscape. He asked me to dinner the following week, and I said yes, despite knowing that the restaurant he'd chosen probably cost more than my monthly rent. Our second date turned into a business consultation when Ryan started asking detailed questions about brand positioning and market differentiation. By our third date, I was sketching logo concepts on cocktail napkins, while Ryan described his dreams of becoming Austin's most recognizable luxury real estate agent. 6 months later, Rodriguez Marketing Solutions landed its first major client when Ryan hired me to rebrand his real estate team. The partnership was intoxicating both personally and professionally. I was creating campaigns that generated real results, and Ryan was the charming face that brought my strategies to life. We complemented each other perfectly, his natural charisma amplifying my creative vision until we were generating buzz throughout Austin's competitive real estate market. Our engagement happened on a perfect spring evening at Mount Bonnell, overlooking the city lights and the Colorado River winding through downtown Austin. Ryan had arranged for a private dinner on the Overlook, complete with string quartet and enough roses to stock a flower shop. When he dropped to one knee with a vintage Cartier ring that had belonged to his grandmother, I felt like I was living in one of the fairy tales I'd stopped believing in years earlier. The wedding was everything I'd dreamed of as a little girl, growing up in San Antonio. We exchanged vows at the Driscoll Hotel, surrounded by 300 guests who represented the best of Austin society. My marketing business had grown exponentially in the 2 years we'd been dating, fueled by referrals from Ryan's satisfied clients and my reputation for creating campaigns that transformed local businesses into regional powerhouses. By our first anniversary, we'd purchased the Westlake home that would become both our sanctuary and the scene of our ultimate destruction. The Mediterranean-style villa sat on 2 acres of meticulously landscaped grounds, with a pool that reflected the hill, country sunsets, and a guest house that Ryan immediately claimed as his home office. The mortgage was substantial, but our combined income made it manageable, especially as my client roster continued expanding and Ryan's sales numbers climbed steadily upward. Those early years of marriage felt like a masterclass in partnership and success. I handled all the marketing for Ryan's real estate team, creating cohesive campaigns that positioned him as the luxury specialist for discerning buyers. My strategies were working beautifully, generating qualified leads and closing deals that established Ryan as a rising star in Austin's competitive market. We developed a rhythm that felt sustainable and profitable. Ryan would identify potential, clients, and market opportunities, while I crafted the messaging and visual branding that transformed possibilities into closed sales. My background in consumer psychology proved invaluable when dealing with high-net-worth individuals who expected sophistication and exclusivity in every interaction. The guest house office became our collaborative workspace, where Ryan could conduct client meetings while I managed the marketing campaigns that kept his phone ringing with new opportunities. We installed state-of-the-art technology, created a professional conference room, and designed the space to reflect the luxury brand we were building together. Our social life revolved around industry events, client entertainment, and networking opportunities that served dual purposes. Every charity gala, every wine tasting, every cultural event became a chance to strengthen relationships and generate new business. We were the couple that other professionals wanted to know, the team that made success look effortless and enjoyable. By year 3 of our marriage, Ryan had become the top producing agent at Pinnacle Realty, and my marketing consultancy had expanded to serve clients throughout Central Texas. We were featured in Austin Monthly magazine as one of the city's most dynamic power couples, and I kept a framed copy of that article in my office as a reminder of how far we'd traveled from that chance meeting at the charity gala. The financial rewards of our partnership allowed us to live the lifestyle we'd always dreamed about. We traveled extensively, taking marketing inspiration trips to New York, Los Angeles, and Miami to study luxury real estate markets in other major cities. These trips served as both business education and romantic getaways, reinforcing the connection between our personal relationship and our professional success. Ryan's charm and my strategic thinking proved to be an unbeatable combination in Austin's social and business circles. He could work a room like a master politician, making everyone feel like the most important person in the conversation, while I observed from the sidelines, analyzing group dynamics and identifying opportunities for strategic relationship building. Our home became a showcase for the lifestyle we were selling to clients. We hosted dinner parties that felt more like exclusive marketing events, where potential buyers could experience the kind of sophisticated living that Ryan's properties promised. I managed every detail of these gatherings, from the wine selection to the conversation flow, ensuring that guests left with a clear understanding of the Rodriguez brand promise. The business relationship was seamless and profitable, but more importantly, it felt authentic. Ryan genuinely appreciated my contributions to his success, and I found immense satisfaction in watching my marketing strategies translate into real-world results. We were building something meaningful together, creating a legacy that would establish us as leaders in Austin's luxury market. Looking back now, I can see the exact moment when things began to shift. It was during our 6th year of marriage, when Ryan started expressing frustration with what he called the administrative burden of our business partnership. He wanted to focus exclusively on client relationships and deal-making, leaving me to handle everything else that went into building and maintaining his brand. Initially, I welcomed the increased responsibility. It meant more creative control over campaigns and strategies, more direct client interaction, and more influence over the direction of Ryan's business. I restructured my own company to accommodate the additional workload, hiring 2 junior associates and expanding our capabilities to match Ryan's growing ambitions. But as Ryan delegated more of the business operations to me, he also began distancing himself from the collaborative process that had made us so successful. He stopped attending the brainstorming sessions where we developed our most innovative campaigns. He started making unilateral decisions about client targeting and market positioning without consulting me. Most concerning, he began taking full credit for successes that were clearly the result of our joint efforts. The shift was subtle at first, manifesting in small changes to how Ryan discussed our work with clients and colleagues. Instead of presenting us as a team, he started positioning himself as the visionary leader who happened to work with a talented marketing consultant. The language was careful and diplomatic, but the implication was clear. I was becoming an employee rather than a partner. I attributed these changes to Ryan's growing confidence and success. After all, he was the one meeting with clients face-to-face, the one signing contracts and closing deals. It seemed natural that he would want to establish his individual identity as Austin's luxury real estate expert, even if that meant downplaying my role in building that reputation. The financial arrangement between us remained unchanged, which helped mask the fundamental shift in our professional dynamic. Ryan continued paying my company substantial fees for marketing services, and my own client base was thriving independently of our collaboration. From the outside, everything looked exactly as it had for years. But I began noticing subtle signs that Ryan was compartmentalizing our business relationship in ways that felt uncomfortable and exclusionary. He started scheduling client meetings without informing me, making it impossible for me to prepare supporting materials or follow up with targeted marketing campaigns. He changed passwords on shared business accounts without explanation, forcing me to request access to information I'd previously managed independently. Most troubling, Ryan began making strategic decisions that contradicted the marketing advice I'd been providing. He would commit to advertising strategies that I knew were ineffective or agree to partnerships that diluted the exclusive brand image we'd spent years carefully constructing. When I questioned these choices, he would dismiss my concerns with vague explanations about industry relationships and long-term positioning. The distance between us was becoming noticeable in our personal relationship as well. Ryan's schedule grew increasingly unpredictable, with more evening appointments and weekend obligations that seemed to multiply without generating proportional increases in closed sales. He started working later and traveling more frequently, often for reasons that remained frustratingly vague when I asked for details. Our dinner conversations, once filled with animated discussions about market trends and campaign strategies, became perfunctory exchanges about schedules and logistics. Ryan seemed distracted and impatient during the time we spent together, as if he was constantly thinking about somewhere else he needed to be, or someone else he needed to see. The guest house office, which had been our collaborative headquarters, for years became exclusively Ryan's domain. He installed a new security system and changed the locks, explaining that he needed better privacy for sensitive client conversations. I was no longer welcome to work from that space, even though I'd helped design and furnish it specifically for our joint business activities. These changes accumulated slowly over months, each individual shift small enough to seem reasonable in isolation. But collectively, they represented a fundamental restructuring of our relationship that I was only beginning to understand. Ryan was systematically removing me from the business we'd built together, while maintaining the facade of partnership that kept me contributing my expertise to his continued success. The realization that something was seriously wrong crystallized during a conversation with my college friend Lisa Thompson, who had become one of Austin's most respected divorce attorneys. We were having lunch at Suerte, discussing her latest case involving a prominent local businessman whose wife had discovered his affairs through credit card statements and travel records. As Lisa described the warning signs that preceded most, marital breakdowns, I felt an uncomfortable recognition creeping through my consciousness. The secretive behavior, the schedule changes, the emotional distance, the financial irregularities, they formed a pattern that I'd been witnessing in my own marriage without acknowledging its significance. That night, I started paying attention to Ryan's behavior with the same analytical focus I brought to marketing campaigns. I began documenting inconsistencies between his stated activities and his actual whereabouts. I started asking more specific questions about his client meetings and business travel. Most importantly, I began protecting myself by restructuring my business operations to reduce dependence on Ryan's real estate success. The process of investigating my own husband felt like a betrayal of everything I'd believed about our marriage and partnership. But as evidence accumulated over the following weeks, I realized that the betrayal had been happening for months, and I was simply catching up to a reality that Ryan had been constructing without my knowledge or consent. The burgundy lipstick on his collar wasn't the beginning of Ryan's deception. It was simply the moment when his carefully managed double life became impossible to ignore. And by the time I discovered that physical evidence of his infidelity, I had already begun implementing the strategic response that would ultimately save my business and my dignity while destroying the reputation he'd spent years building with my help. The marketing expertise that had made Ryan successful was about to become the weapon that ensured his complete professional destruction. He had taught me everything I needed to know about his vulnerabilities and weaknesses. Now I was going to use that knowledge to show him the difference between building a brand and rebuilding a life from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. The first crack in our perfect facade appeared on a humid Thursday morning in July when I walked into our guest house office to retrieve marketing files for a client presentation. Ryan was on the phone, his back turned to the door, speaking in a voice I'd never heard him use with clients or colleagues. It was softer, more intimate, filled with the kind of warmth he used to reserve exclusively for me during our early dating years. I heard fragments of conversation that made my stomach clench with an emotion I couldn't immediately identify. Words like, "Can't wait to see you," and "tonight after the Henderson showing." And most devastating of all, a low chuckle followed by, "You know exactly what you do to me when you wear that dress." This wasn't Ryan Rodriguez, the professional real estate agent discussing market conditions with a client. This was a man talking to someone who made him feel things that apparently I no longer could. He ended the call abruptly when he noticed me standing in the doorway, spinning around in his leather chair with a smile that looked practiced rather than genuine. The transition from intimate lover to professional husband happened so smoothly that for a moment I wondered if I'd imagined the entire conversation, but the slight flush on his neck and the way he immediately busied himself with paperwork on his desk told me everything I needed to know about what I'd witnessed. Ryan's explanation came too quickly and with too much detail. The Henderson showing was a legitimate appointment with potential buyers from Dallas, but he embellished the story with unnecessary specifics about their timeline and budget requirements. He mentioned meeting his assistant Sophia there to handle paperwork and coordinate with the sellers, which should have been routine information but felt like a confession wrapped in professional justification. Sophia Chen had joined Ryan's team 8 months earlier, and I'd been present during the interview process. 28 years old with a fresh real estate license and an MBA from UT, she possessed the kind of polished sophistication that opened doors in Austin's luxury market. Her long black hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders, and she had a smile that could convince skeptical buyers to write offers on overpriced properties. During the hiring process, I'd expressed concerns about adding another team member when Ryan's current assistant was handling the workload effectively. But Ryan had been insistent about Sophia's potential, emphasizing her social media expertise and her connections to Austin's young professional community. He painted her hiring as a strategic investment in expanding their market reach, particularly among tech executives and entrepreneurs who were driving Austin's luxury real estate boom. Looking back, I could see how Ryan had maneuvered the hiring decision to minimize my involvement in the process. He'd scheduled Sophia's final interview for a day when I was traveling to San Antonio for a client meeting, ensuring that I couldn't observe their interaction or ask the kind of probing questions that might have revealed the true nature of his interest in bringing her onto the team. Sophia's integration into Ryan's business operations happened with suspicious efficiency. Within weeks of her hiring, she was accompanying him to client meetings, networking events, and property showings that had previously been solo activities. Ryan explained this accelerated responsibility as evidence of her exceptional capabilities and his confidence in her potential to contribute meaningfully to the team's success. The changes in Ryan's behavior became more pronounced as Sophia's role expanded. He started paying more attention to his appearance, investing in expensive cologne and updating his wardrobe with designer suits that cost more than most people's monthly salaries. His workout routine intensified, and he began scheduling sessions with a personal trainer who specialized in helping executives maintain their competitive edge. These improvements might have been flattering if they'd felt like efforts to impress me or enhance our relationship. Instead, they carried the unmistakable energy of a man preparing to attract someone new. Ryan was investing in himself with the focused intensity of someone launching a seduction campaign, and I was clearly not the intended target of his enhanced appeal. The financial implications of Sophia's presence began manifesting in ways that should have alarmed me immediately. Ryan's expense reports showed an increase in client entertainment costs, with regular charges at upscale restaurants and wine bars that I'd never heard him mention. When I asked about specific expenditures, he would provide vague explanations about building relationships with high-net-worth prospects and maintaining Austin's luxury real estate network. More concerning were the travel expenses that seemed disproportionate to Ryan's actual client activities. Hotel charges in Houston and Dallas for supposed market research trips that produced no obvious business results. Airline tickets for conferences that didn't appear on any industry calendar. Restaurant bills for 2 people in cities where Ryan claimed to be conducting solo property research. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore, but confronting Ryan about these discrepancies felt like crossing a line from concerned wife to suspicious investigator. I wanted to trust the man I'd married, to believe that his explanations reflected legitimate business activities rather than evidence of a carefully constructed deception. But my marketing background had taught me to recognize when someone was managing perception rather than sharing truth. The emotional distance between us was expanding at the same rate as Ryan's mysterious expenses. Our conversations became increasingly superficial, focused on logistics and schedules rather than the dreams and strategies that had once connected us so deeply. He stopped asking for my input on business decisions, stopped sharing details about client interactions, and stopped treating me like a partner whose opinion mattered to his success. Our physical relationship suffered as Ryan's attention shifted toward whatever was consuming his energy outside our marriage. He became distracted. During intimate moments, his mind clearly elsewhere even when his body was present. The passionate connection that had sustained us through years of building our business empire together seemed to evaporate without explanation or discussion. I found myself analyzing Ryan's behavior with the same strategic thinking I applied to marketing challenges, looking for patterns and motivations that might explain the dramatic changes in our relationship. The evidence was accumulating steadily, but I wasn't ready to accept the obvious conclusion that my husband was having an affair with his young, beautiful assistant. The turning point came during a charity auction at the Omni Hotel, one of those glittering Austin society events where real estate professionals gathered to see and be seen while supporting local causes. Ryan and I attended together, maintaining the facade of a successful power couple. but I spent the evening observing his interactions with Sophia from across the ballroom. Their body language told a story that their professional relationship couldn't explain. The way Sophia's hand lingered on Ryan's arm when she whispered in his ear. The intimate proximity they maintained while supposedly discussing business matters. The shared glances and private smiles that excluded everyone else in their immediate vicinity. Most damning of all, the way Ryan's entire demeanor softened when Sophia approached, as if her presence activated some part of his personality that I no longer had access to. I watched my husband fall in love with another woman in real time, surrounded by hundreds of Austin's social and business elite, while maintaining the perfect smile of a wife who was completely oblivious to the betrayal happening 3 feet away from her. The performance was excruciating, but it was also educational. I was learning exactly how effectively Ryan could compartmentalize his emotions and manage conflicting relationships without revealing the stress of maintaining multiple identities. The auction ended with Ryan and Sophia volunteering to coordinate follow-up activities with major donors, a responsibility that would require several private meetings over the following weeks. They presented this collaboration as a natural extension of their professional partnership, but I recognized it for what it actually was: a convenient excuse for spending time together away from the office and away from my potential observation. That night, I made the decision that would ultimately save both my business and my dignity. Instead of confronting Ryan about my suspicions, I decided to conduct my own investigation using the same methodical approach that had made me successful in marketing. I would gather evidence, document patterns, and build an irrefutable case before revealing what I'd discovered. The investigation began with a comprehensive review of our financial records, both personal and business-related. I created spreadsheets tracking Ryan's expenses, travel patterns, and schedule irregularities, looking for correlations that might reveal the scope and timeline of his deception. The picture that emerged was both more extensive and more calculated than I'd anticipated. Ryan had been funding his relationship with Sophia using money from our joint accounts and his business expense budget, effectively making me an unwitting financier of his betrayal. The expensive dinners, the weekend getaways, the gifts that I'd never received, they were all documented in black and white on statements that told the story of a man living a double life with remarkable financial recklessness. I also began paying attention to Ryan's communication patterns, noting when he received text messages and phone calls that he wouldn't answer in my presence. I observed his schedule more carefully, comparing his stated activities with evidence of where he'd actually spent his time. Most importantly, I started documenting these discrepancies in a secure digital file that would provide irrefutable proof of his deception when the time came to confront him. The emotional toll of conducting surveillance on my own husband was devastating, but the process also revealed the extent to which Ryan had been manipulating our relationship to facilitate his affair. He'd been gaslighting me for months, making me question my own perceptions and instincts whenever I noticed inconsistencies in his behavior. The man I'd trusted with my heart and my business had been systematically lying to me while using my own resources to finance his betrayal. As evidence accumulated, I realized that confronting Ryan about his affair would only be the beginning of a much larger conversation about our business partnership and financial entanglements. If our marriage was ending, I needed to protect the marketing company I'd built and ensure that Ryan couldn't destroy my professional reputation in retaliation for discovering his infidelity. This realization prompted me to schedule a consultation with Lisa Thompson, my college friend who had become one of Austin's most successful divorce attorneys. Lisa's office occupied the top floor of a sleek downtown building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lady Bird Lake and the Austin skyline. The space radiated competence and success, exactly the kind of environment where someone could plan the strategic dismantling of a fraudulent marriage. Lisa listened to my story with the focused attention of a professional who had heard similar tales countless times before. She took notes while I described Ryan's changing behavior, Sophia's integration into his business operations, and the financial evidence I'd collected over the previous weeks. When I finished recounting the facts, Lisa's expression was both sympathetic and grimly determined. Her advice was both practical and ruthless. Document everything, protect my business assets, and prepare for the possibility that Ryan might attempt to claim ownership of marketing strategies and client relationships that I'd developed independently. Texas was a community property state, which meant that assets acquired during marriage were generally considered joint property. But intellectual property and business goodwill created through individual effort could be protected with proper legal strategies. Most importantly, Lisa warned me about the potential for Ryan to retaliate professionally if he discovered my investigation before I was ready to file for divorce. Men in his position often attempted to damage their wives' business relationships and professional reputations as a way of maintaining control during the dissolution process. I needed to be prepared for a fight that would extend far beyond the personal realm into the competitive world of Austin's business community. The consultation with Lisa crystallized my understanding of what I was facing. This wasn't just a marriage falling apart due to infidelity and emotional neglect. This was a comprehensive betrayal that threatened both my personal happiness and my professional survival. Ryan had been using my marketing expertise to build his real estate empire while simultaneously planning his exit from our marriage with someone who represented everything I used to be: young, ambitious, and naive enough to believe in his promises. The burgundy lipstick on Ryan's collar, when I finally discovered it months later, wasn't the beginning of his betrayal. It was simply the moment when his carefully managed deception became visible and undeniable. By that time, I had already begun implementing the strategic response that would protect my business and ensure that Ryan's infidelity would cost him far more than he could have imagined when he first started pursuing Sophia Chen. The foundation of Ryan's success had always been my marketing expertise, my strategic thinking, and my ability to build authentic relationships with clients who trusted the Rodriguez brand. He was about to discover what happened when the person who had created his professional reputation decided to destroy it instead. The burgundy lipstick had painted a target on his carefully constructed image, and I was about to show him the difference between building a brand and watching it burn. The weeks following my discovery of the burgundy lipstick transformed me from a betrayed wife into a strategic architect of justice. While Ryan continued his charade of normalcy, completely unaware that his carefully constructed double life had been exposed, I implemented a plan that would systematically dismantle everything he'd built using my expertise and connections. My first move was restructuring my marketing company to legally separate my intellectual property from any potential claims Ryan might make during divorce proceedings. Working with Lisa Thompson and a corporate attorney she recommended, I created ironclad documentation proving that every successful campaign, every innovative strategy, and every client relationship that had elevated Ryan's career belonged exclusively to me. The process revealed just how dependent Ryan's success had been on my contributions. His entire brand identity, from the logo design to the tagline that appeared on his billboards, had emerged from my creative work. The social media strategies that generated his leads, the content marketing that established his expertise, and the relationship management systems that retained his clients were all products of my strategic thinking and professional experience. More damaging for Ryan was the discovery that his most valuable client relationships were actually my relationships, built through years of networking, exceptional service delivery, and the kind of authentic connection building that couldn't be replicated or transferred. These clients worked with Ryan Rodriguez because they trusted the Rodriguez brand, and that brand was entirely my creation. I began reaching out to these key clients individually, ostensibly to discuss upcoming marketing campaigns and service improvements. During these conversations, I subtly reinforced my role in their positive experiences with Ryan's team, while planting seeds of doubt about future service quality. I never directly criticized Ryan or revealed our marital problems, but I made it clear that my continued involvement in their account management was uncertain. The response was immediate and telling. Client after client expressed concern about maintaining access to my marketing expertise, with several explicitly stating that my strategic input was the primary reason they chose Ryan over other luxury real estate agents. When I mentioned the possibility of transitioning my services to other real estate professionals, multiple clients asked for referrals to agents who could guarantee continued access to my marketing support. Simultaneously, I began building relationships with Ryan's competitors, particularly the female agents who had been struggling to gain traction in Austin's male-dominated luxury market. I offered to conduct complimentary marketing assessments for their businesses, demonstrating the kind of strategic thinking that had made Ryan successful while positioning myself as a potential partner for their future growth. Diana Foster emerged as my most promising ally in this process. She had been competing directly with Ryan for high-end listings in West Austin, often losing deals despite having superior market knowledge and client service skills. Diana's primary disadvantage had been her inability to match the sophisticated marketing campaigns that gave Ryan's properties maximum exposure and premium positioning. During our initial consultation, Diana reviewed examples of the marketing materials I'd created for Ryan's listings, immediately recognizing the professional quality and strategic sophistication that had been missing from her own promotional efforts. When I offered to develop similar campaigns for her properties, she accepted enthusiastically, understanding that this partnership could transform her competitive position overnight. The collaboration with Diana allowed me to demonstrate my value, independent of Ryan, while building an alternative revenue stream that would support my transition away from our joint business activities. More importantly, it gave me access to insider information about Ryan's recent performance, client satisfaction levels, and reputation within Austin's real estate community. What I learned was both shocking and validating. Ryan's recent behavior had not gone unnoticed by his colleagues and competitors. His increased absences from industry events, his delegation of client responsibilities to Sophia, and his declining attention to deal details had generated whispers about his professional commitment and reliability. Several agents mentioned losing potential clients who had been referred to Ryan, but reported negative experiences with his team's responsiveness and follow-through. The marketing materials for his recent listings lacked the innovation and impact that had previously set his properties apart from competing offerings. Most tellingly, his closing ratios had declined significantly over the past 6 months, suggesting that his personal distractions were affecting his ability to convert leads into sales. Armed with this intelligence, I began implementing the most devastating aspect of my strategy. I created a comprehensive database of every client, vendor, and industry contact who had contributed to Ryan's success, along with detailed records of my specific contributions to each relationship. This documentation would serve as evidence in divorce proceedings, while also providing a roadmap for redirecting these valuable connections toward competitors who could better serve their needs. The process of cataloging Ryan's professional network revealed the extent to which his success had been built on borrowed credibility and outsourced expertise. Beyond my marketing contributions, Ryan had relied heavily on relationships and referrals that originated through my networking activities, my industry involvement, and my reputation for ethical business practices. I began subtly redirecting these valuable connections toward Diana Foster and other female agents who could provide superior service while maintaining the professional standards that had attracted these clients originally. The transition was gradual and organic, presented as a natural evolution of business relationships rather than a calculated effort to undermine Ryan's market position. The financial investigation I'd been conducting in parallel revealed even more damaging information about Ryan's recent activities. Beyond the obvious expenses related to his affair with Sophia, I discovered that he'd been making unauthorized withdrawals from business accounts to fund lifestyle upgrades and entertainment, activities that had no legitimate professional purpose. Most concerning was evidence that Ryan had been misrepresenting his marketing costs to clients, charging premium fees for campaigns that I was providing at significantly lower rates through our joint business arrangement. This markup strategy allowed him to pocket substantial additional income while claiming that his superior marketing justified higher commission rates than his competitors charged. Lisa Thompson confirmed that this financial manipulation constituted fraud that could result in both civil liability and potential criminal charges. Ryan had been stealing from clients by overcharging for services while simultaneously stealing from me by undervaluing my contributions to his success. The evidence we'd assembled would not only support a favorable divorce settlement, but could also trigger professional licensing investigations that would end his real estate career. The most delicious irony was that Ryan remained completely oblivious to the systematic destruction of his professional foundation. He continued his affair with Sophia, maintained his facade of marital normalcy, and conducted business as if nothing had changed. His arrogance and self-absorption prevented him from recognizing that the woman he was betraying possessed both the knowledge and the motivation to destroy everything he'd worked to build. 3 months after discovering the burgundy lipstick, I was ready to reveal the full scope of my preparation. I scheduled a meeting with Ryan under the pretense of discussing our upcoming wedding anniversary plans, suggesting that we needed to coordinate schedules and make reservations for the kind of romantic celebration that would reinforce our public image as Austin's premier power couple. Ryan agreed to the meeting with the enthusiasm of a man who believed he was successfully managing multiple relationships without consequences. He suggested meeting at our home rather than a restaurant, claiming that he wanted privacy for discussing our personal plans and professional goals for the coming year. The irony of his desire for privacy wasn't lost on me. Ryan wanted to discuss our anniversary while sitting in the living room of the house he'd been systematically undermining, surrounded by the luxury furnishings and artwork that my marketing income had helped purchase, planning a celebration of the marriage he was actively destroying through his relationship with Sophia. I prepared for this conversation with the same meticulous attention to detail that had made my marketing campaigns so successful. Every document was organized, every piece of evidence was verified, and every potential response was anticipated. This wasn't going to be an emotional confrontation between a betrayed wife and an unfaithful husband. This was going to be a professional presentation of irrefutable facts, followed by a strategic negotiation of terms. The meeting began exactly as I'd planned, with Ryan in his most charming and attentive mode, discussing restaurant options and weekend getaway possibilities with the kind of romantic enthusiasm that might have been touching if I hadn't known about Sophia. His performance was flawless, demonstrating the same charismatic energy that had made him successful in real estate sales and had originally attracted me to him years earlier. When Ryan finished outlining his anniversary plans, I opened my laptop and connected it to our living room television, transforming our cozy conversation space into a presentation environment. His expression shifted from romantic anticipation to confused concern as I pulled up the first slide of what I'd titled, "The Real State of Our Union." The presentation began with a comprehensive financial analysis showing every suspicious expense, every unauthorized withdrawal, and every questionable charge that had appeared on our joint accounts over the past 8 months. Ryan's face lost color as he recognized purchases he'd thought were hidden, trips he'd claimed were business-related, and gifts he'd never intended me to discover. The second section detailed his relationship with Sophia, complete with time-stamped photographs from social media, restaurant receipts that corresponded to their private dinners, and hotel records that documented their weekend getaways. I'd assembled a timeline that tracked the development of their affair from its beginning through its current status, including evidence of the professional opportunities he'd created for her and the client resources he'd diverted to support her career advancement. But the most devastating section focused on the systematic theft of my intellectual property and the fraudulent misrepresentation of marketing costs to his clients. I documented every campaign, every strategy, and every innovation that Ryan had claimed as his own work, while charging clients premium rates for my expertise. The evidence showed not only marital infidelity, but professional fraud that violated real estate licensing regulations and client trust. Ryan's attempts to interrupt my presentation were met with calm redirection back to the evidence on screen. This wasn't a discussion or a negotiation. This was the reveal of information that would determine the terms of our inevitable divorce and the consequences of his choices over the past year. The final section outlined the strategic moves I'd already implemented to protect my business and redirect his client relationships toward competitors who could provide superior service. I showed him the partnership agreements I'd signed with Diana Foster, the client testimonials that credited my work rather than his charm, and the industry connections that would follow me rather than remain loyal to his tarnished reputation. When the presentation ended, Ryan sat in stunned silence, processing the scope of evidence I'd assembled and the comprehensive nature of my preparation. He'd expected to spend the evening planning a romantic anniversary celebration with his wife, while maintaining his secret relationship with his mistress. Instead, he was confronting the reality that his carefully managed double life had been completely exposed and strategically dismantled. His first response was predictable denial, claiming that I'd misunderstood innocent business relationships and normal professional expenses. When that approach failed to gain traction against the documented evidence, he shifted to anger, accusing me of spying on him and violating his privacy. Finally, he attempted bargaining, promising to end his relationship with Sophia and commit to rebuilding our marriage if I would agree to keep the information private. My response was calm, professional, and final. The marriage was over, the business partnership was dissolved, and the only remaining question was whether Ryan wanted to negotiate a civilized divorce settlement or face the public exposure of his fraud and infidelity. I'd already consulted with attorneys, restructured my business operations, and secured the client relationships that would support my independent success. Ryan could either accept responsibility for his choices and work toward a reasonable settlement, or he could face criminal fraud charges, professional licensing violations, and the complete destruction of his reputation in Austin's business community. The burgundy lipstick on his collar had been the final piece of evidence I needed to justify the complete dismantling of his professional and personal credibility. 6 months later, Ryan Rodriguez was working as a junior associate at a small real estate firm in San Antonio, having lost his license to practice in Travis County and facing ongoing civil litigation from former clients who discovered his fraudulent billing practices. Sophia Chen moved to Houston after being terminated from Pinnacle Realty for her role in the client fraud scheme. Meanwhile, my partnership with Diana Foster had transformed both of our businesses, establishing us as Austin's premier female-led luxury real estate and marketing team. The Rodriguez name still appeared on billboards throughout the city, but now it represented my success rather than Ryan's deception. The burgundy lipstick that could have humiliated me instead painted the path to my independence and professional triumph. Sometimes the most devastating betrayals become the greatest, opportunities for those smart enough to turn pain into power and revenge into sustainable success. The morning after my devastating presentation to Ryan, I woke up in our Westlake home for what I knew would be one of the last times as Mrs. Rodriguez. The autumn sunlight streaming through our bedroom windows felt different somehow, charged with the energy of transformation and new possibilities. Ryan had spent the night in the guest house office, presumably processing the scope of evidence I'd assembled and contemplating his rapidly diminishing options. I made coffee using the expensive Italian espresso machine we'd purchased during our honeymoon in Tuscany, a relic from happier times when we'd believed in building a life together, rather than destroying one. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was using a symbol of our romantic past to fuel my preparation for his professional and personal annihilation. My phone buzzed with a text message from Diana Foster, confirming our breakfast meeting at Café Noce downtown. She'd been waiting months for the opportunity to formalize our partnership, and today would mark the official launch of Foster Rodriguez Marketing and Real Estate, a collaboration that would revolutionize Austin's luxury property market while establishing my independence from Ryan's tainted brand. The drive into downtown Austin felt like a pilgrimage toward my new identity. I navigated through the morning traffic on Mopac, watching the city skyline grow larger as I approached the heart of the business district, where I would soon establish my own empire. The familiar landmarks of my married life, Lake Austin, The country club, the neighborhoods where Ryan had sold millions of dollars worth of properties, looked different now, like territories I was preparing to conquer rather than share. Diana was already seated at our usual table when I arrived, her silver hair perfectly styled, and her navy blazer radiating the kind of professional confidence that had intimidated male competitors throughout her 20-year career. She stood to greet me with the warm embrace of someone who understood exactly what I had endured and respected the strategic brilliance of my response. Our conversation began with a comprehensive review of the marketing strategies I'd developed for Ryan's listings over the past 3 years. Diana had studied these campaigns extensively, recognizing the sophisticated psychology and visual storytelling that had set Ryan's properties apart from competing offerings. She understood that access to my creative expertise represented a competitive advantage that could transform her business overnight. The partnership agreement we'd been negotiating for weeks was more generous than anything Ryan had ever offered me during our marriage. Diana proposed a 50-50 split of all marketing revenue, joint ownership of client relationships we developed together, and equal decision-making authority over strategic direction and business expansion. Most importantly, she insisted that my name appear prominently in all branding and marketing materials, ensuring that my professional identity would be associated with success rather than hidden behind someone else's ambitions. As we finalized the contract details, Diana shared intelligence about Ryan's recent performance that confirmed my suspicions about his declining effectiveness. Several luxury properties he'd listed in the past 6 months had failed to sell within expected timeframes, forcing price reductions that reflected poorly on his market analysis and pricing strategies. His absence from key industry events had been noticed by other professionals, and whispers about his reliability were circulating through Austin's tight-knit real estate community. More damaging was Diana's revelation that 2 of Ryan's most valuable clients had already reached out to her office, expressing concern about communication breakdowns and service quality issues with his team. These clients were specifically asking about access to the marketing expertise they'd come to expect, essentially requesting me by name even though they didn't realize I was available to work with other agents. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. While Ryan was distracted by his relationship with Sophia and scrambling to respond to my evidence presentation, his business was deteriorating in ways that would make my transition to independence both seamless and profitable. The clients who had generated his highest commissions were already seeking alternatives, and I was perfectly positioned to provide superior service through my partnership with Diana. Our breakfast concluded with Diana presenting me with business cards and marketing materials that featured both our names prominently, along with a professional photography session scheduled for the following week to create promotional images for our joint venture. The speed and efficiency of this transition reflected Diana's understanding that timing was crucial for capturing Ryan's disaffected clients before they committed to other agents. I returned home to find Ryan waiting in our kitchen, looking haggard and defeated in a way I'd never seen during our 9 years of marriage. His usual confidence had been replaced by the desperate energy of someone who just realized that his carefully constructed world was collapsing faster than he could control or repair. His first attempt at damage control involved promises of immediate change and complete transparency. He claimed that his relationship with Sophia had been a temporary lapse in judgment, motivated by midlife crisis and professional stress, rather than genuine romantic feelings. He offered to fire her immediately, seek counseling for his personal issues, and restructure our business partnership to give me greater recognition and financial compensation. The performance was both pathetic and insulting, demonstrating that Ryan still believed he could manipulate his way out of consequences through charm and strategic concessions. He seemed genuinely surprised that I wasn't interested in negotiating terms for staying married to a man who'd been systematically defrauding both me and his clients while conducting an affair with his assistant. My response was calm, factual, and final. The evidence I'd presented wasn't the opening move in a marital negotiation. It was documentation for divorce proceedings that would begin immediately, regardless of his promises or protests. The business partnership was already dissolved through legal restructuring I'd completed weeks earlier. The client relationships he considered his assets were actually mine to redirect as I chose. Ryan's second approach involved threats and intimidation, warning me about the professional consequences of exposing his misconduct and the financial damage that would result from dissolving our business relationship. He claimed that my success had been dependent on his client connections and industry reputation, implying that I would struggle to maintain my marketing business without access to his referral network. This strategy revealed just how thoroughly Ryan had underestimated both my capabilities and my preparation. He genuinely believed that his charm and connections were the foundation of our joint success, failing to recognize that his entire reputation had been built on my marketing expertise and strategic thinking. His threats carried no weight because the power dynamic he was trying to leverage had already shifted completely in my favor. The conversation that followed was perhaps the most honest discussion we'd had in years, stripped of the romantic pretense and professional diplomacy that had masked our fundamental incompatibility. Ryan finally acknowledged the extent to which he'd taken credit for my work, minimized my contributions to his success, and used our joint resources to finance his relationship with Sophia. His admissions were both validating and infuriating, confirming suspicions I'd harbored for months while revealing additional layers of deception I hadn't fully understood. Ryan had been planning his exit from our marriage for nearly a year, gradually transferring assets and preparing alternative arrangements while maintaining the facade of committed partnership. The most shocking revelation was that Ryan had already consulted with his own attorney about divorce proceedings, apparently believing that he could control the timeline and terms of our separation to his advantage. He'd assumed that my emotional attachment to our marriage would make me willing to accept an unfavorable settlement rather than endure the public embarrassment of divorce and business dissolution. This miscalculation demonstrated the fundamental flaw in Ryan's understanding of both my character and my strategic capabilities. He'd confused my loyalty and discretion with weakness and naivety, failing to recognize that the same analytical skills that had built his reputation could be used to destroy it just as effectively. The legal proceedings that followed were swift and decisive, facilitated by the comprehensive documentation I'd assembled, and Ryan's inability to contest evidence of his fraud and infidelity. Lisa Thompson's expertise in high-asset divorce cases ensured that the settlement reflected both my contributions to our joint success and the damages caused by Ryan's misconduct. The financial resolution exceeded my most optimistic expectations, providing me with sufficient capital to expand my marketing business while maintaining the lifestyle I'd grown accustomed to during our marriage. More importantly, the legal judgment included restrictions on Ryan's ability to compete with my new business ventures, and explicit recognition of my intellectual property rights to marketing strategies and client relationships. The professional consequences for Ryan were even more severe than I'd anticipated. The Texas Real Estate Commission launched an investigation into his billing practices and client fraud, resulting in license suspension and substantial fines that effectively ended his career in luxury real estate. Several former clients filed civil lawsuits seeking damages for overcharged marketing fees and misrepresented services. Sophia Chen's involvement in the fraud scheme made her equally vulnerable to professional sanctions and legal liability. Her real estate license was revoked after the commission determined that she'd participated knowingly in client deception and billing manipulation. The promising career she'd hoped to build through her relationship with Ryan was destroyed before it had really begun. The transformation of my own professional identity happened with remarkable speed and success. The partnership with Diana Foster generated immediate results as we captured several high-value listings that had been poorly served by other agents. Our combined expertise in marketing strategy and market analysis created a competitive advantage that was immediately apparent to both clients and competitors. Within 6 months of our official launch, Foster Rodriguez Marketing and Real Estate had become one of Austin's most sought-after luxury property teams. Our innovative campaigns and superior client service generated referrals that kept us booked months in advance. while our reputation for ethical business practices attracted clients who'd been disappointed by other agents' performance. The success was particularly satisfying because it demonstrated that my contributions to Ryan's career had been the determining factor in his previous achievements. Without access to my marketing expertise and strategic thinking, he'd been reduced to competing on charm and connections alone, a strategy that proved insufficient in Austin's sophisticated luxury market. My personal transformation was equally dramatic, as I rediscovered aspects of my personality and ambition that had been suppressed during my marriage to Ryan. The energy I'd devoted to supporting his dreams was now directed toward building something that reflected my own values and vision. The woman who'd hidden behind her husband's reputation emerged as a confident entrepreneur with her own identity and achievements. The house in Westlake became exclusively mine through the divorce settlement, but I chose to sell it and purchase a smaller property in Tarrytown that better suited my independent lifestyle. The Mediterranean villa had been selected to impress Ryan's clients and reflect his taste for ostentatious luxury. My new home was chosen for its character, privacy, and potential for hosting the kind of intimate gatherings that would strengthen client relationships and professional networks. The process of creating my new life was both liberating and challenging, requiring me to rebuild social connections and professional relationships that had been filtered through my marriage to Ryan. Some friendships didn't survive the transition, particularly among couples who felt uncomfortable taking sides or maintaining relationships with both of us independently. But the authentic connections that remained were stronger and more meaningful than the superficial relationships that had characterized much of our married social life. I discovered that many people had been more interested in my company than Ryan's charm, and that my departure from his orbit actually enhanced rather than diminished my appeal as a friend and business associate. The most unexpected outcome of my divorce was the inspiration it provided to other women in similar situations. Word of my strategic response to Ryan's betrayal spread through Austin's professional community, generating admiration and curiosity about how I'd managed such a comprehensive and successful transition. Several women contacted me seeking advice about protecting themselves from financial manipulation and professional marginalization in their own marriages and business partnerships. These conversations led to the development of workshops and consulting services focused on helping women recognize and respond to economic abuse and professional exploitation. This advocacy work became an important component of my new identity, as I realized that my experience with Ryan represented a pattern of behavior that affected many successful women who'd subordinated their own ambitions to support their partners' careers. The skills I'd developed in marketing strategy and competitive analysis proved equally valuable in helping other women assess their situations and develop plans for protecting their interests. The workshops I conducted on financial literacy and legal protection for professional women generated both revenue and personal satisfaction, as I watched participants gain confidence and develop strategies for asserting their value in both personal and professional relationships. The transformation from Ryan's hidden partner to an independent advocate for women's empowerment felt like the natural evolution of lessons learned through betrayal and recovery. A year after discovering the burgundy lipstick on Ryan's collar, I hosted a celebration at my new Tarrytown home to mark the anniversary of Foster Rodriguez Marketing and Real Estate. The guest list included clients, colleagues, and friends who had supported my transition from dependent wife to independent entrepreneur. Diana Foster offered a toast that captured the essence of our successful partnership and the broader significance of my journey. She spoke about the courage required to transform personal devastation into professional opportunity and the inspiration that my example provided to women facing similar challenges in their own lives. The evening concluded with private reflection on how dramatically my circumstances had changed in just 12 months. The woman who'd discovered her husband's infidelity through a lipstick stain had become a successful business owner, respected professional, and mentor to other women navigating difficult transitions. Ryan Rodriguez had intended the burgundy lipstick to be evidence of his sexual conquest and personal triumph over the constraints of marriage and partnership. Instead, It became the catalyst for his complete professional destruction and my transformation into everything he'd prevented me from becoming during our years together. The lipstick had indeed painted something red, but it wasn't my humiliation or defeat. It was Ryan's reputation, stained permanently with the consequences of underestimating the woman who'd made his success possible and who'd proven equally capable of ensuring his failure. 2 years after the burgundy lipstick incident that changed everything, I stood in the gleaming conference room of Foster Rodriguez Marketing and Real Estate, looking out at the Austin skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected my transformation from betrayed wife to industry powerhouse. The view encompassed downtown Austin's rapid growth, the Colorado River winding through the heart of the city, and the hill country beyond, all representing territories where my new empire had established dominance. The morning brought news that would complete my vindication in ways I hadn't anticipated when I first discovered Ryan's betrayal. Marcus Williams, my former business partner who had watched our marriage implode from the professional sidelines, called with information that would provide the final chapter in Ryan's spectacular downfall. Ryan Rodriguez, once Austin's golden boy of luxury real estate, had been arrested the previous evening on charges of wire fraud and money laundering related to a real estate investment scheme he'd been running from San Antonio. The elaborate con involved selling fractional ownership interests in luxury properties to investors who believed they were purchasing legitimate vacation rental investments. In reality, Ryan had been using new investor money to pay returns to earlier investors, while skimming substantial amounts for personal expenses. The scheme had unraveled when one of Ryan's investors, a retired tech executive from Dallas, decided to surprise his family with an impromptu weekend at the Lake Travis property he believed he partially owned. Instead of the luxury villa described, in Ryan's marketing materials, he found a modest rental house that was already occupied by another family who claimed they owned the property outright. The investigation that followed revealed a web of forged documents, fictional property descriptions, and fabricated financial statements that demonstrated Ryan's descent from licensed real estate professional to desperate criminal. The man who had once sold legitimate luxury properties to Austin's elite was now facing federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Marcus explained that the fraud investigation had uncovered additional evidence of Ryan's misconduct during our marriage, including the systematic overcharging of marketing services that I had suspected but couldn't fully document at the time. Federal investigators were now examining every transaction from Ryan's real estate career, looking for patterns of deception that extended far beyond his recent investment scheme. The irony was almost poetic. Ryan's downfall had begun with his inability to maintain the marketing excellence that had built his reputation, forcing him to seek alternative income sources through increasingly desperate and illegal means. The expertise he'd stolen from me during our marriage had been impossible to replicate independently, leading him down a path of fraud that would ultimately destroy not just his career, but his freedom. Sophia Chen's fate had been equally devastating, though her trajectory had taken a different direction than Ryan's criminal enterprise. After losing her real estate license and facing civil liability for her role in defrauding Ryan's clients, she had attempted to rebuild her career in Houston's competitive market. However, her association with Ryan's scandals had followed her, making it impossible to establish credibility with new clients or employers. According to industry sources, Sophia was now working as a retail manager at a luxury department store in the Galleria, a humbling come-down from her aspirations to become a power player in Texas real estate. Her social media presence, once filled with glamorous photos from expensive restaurants and exotic vacations funded by Ryan's fraudulent activities, had been scrubbed clean of any references to her former lifestyle. The news of Ryan's arrest provided a satisfying sense of closure, but it also reminded me of how far I'd traveled from the woman who had once invested her energy in building someone else's dreams. The Emma Rodriguez who discovered that burgundy lipstick stain had been naive enough to believe that loyalty and hard work would be rewarded with respect and partnership. The woman standing in this corner office had learned that true security came only from building something that couldn't be stolen or diminished by someone else's betrayal. Foster Rodriguez Marketing and Real Estate had exceeded every projection Diana and I had established when we formalized our partnership. Our client roster included Austin's most prestigious luxury properties, from multi-million-dollar estates in Tarrytown to sprawling hill country ranches that attracted celebrities, and tech executives seeking privacy and sophistication. The marketing campaigns we developed had become legendary in Austin's real estate community, featuring innovative use of drone photography, virtual reality tours, and social media strategies that generated national attention for our most exclusive listings. Our success had attracted coverage in Architectural Digest, Town & Country, and Forbes, establishing Austin as a luxury destination while positioning our team as the premier resource for high-end properties. More importantly, our partnership had created opportunities for other women in Austin's real estate community, as Diana and I made a point of hiring female photographers, stagers, and contractors whenever possible. We had established a network of professional women who supported each other's businesses while delivering exceptional results for our shared clients. The mentorship program I had developed for women facing financial exploitation in marriage or business partnerships had grown into a nonprofit organization that provided legal resources, financial counseling, and strategic planning services. The Emma Rodriguez Foundation operated from a renovated warehouse in East Austin, offering workshops, support groups, and individual consultations for women navigating complex transitions. The foundation's work had attracted attention from national women's organizations and domestic violence prevention groups, leading to speaking engagements and consulting opportunities that expanded my influence beyond Austin's business community. The experience of transforming personal betrayal into professional success had become a template that other women could adapt to their own circumstances. One of the foundation's most successful programs involved teaching women to recognize and document financial abuse, using the same investigative techniques I had employed to expose Ryan's misconduct. These skills proved invaluable for women whose partners were hiding assets, manipulating business finances, or using economic control to maintain power in deteriorating relationships. The program had helped dozens of women protect themselves legally and financially before filing for divorce or ending business partnerships, ensuring that they entered negotiations from positions of strength rather than vulnerability. The satisfaction of watching these women reclaim their power and rebuild their lives provided a sense of purpose that transcended my personal success in real estate and marketing. My own romantic life had evolved carefully and deliberately, as I had no interest in repeating the mistakes that had made me vulnerable to Ryan's manipulation. I was dating James Mitchell, a successful environmental attorney who had been referred to me by Lisa Thompson when I needed legal advice about the foundation's nonprofit status. James represented everything that Ryan had pretended to be during our courtship: genuinely supportive of my professional ambitions, intellectually curious about my work, and committed to building a partnership based on mutual respect rather than one person's subordination to the other's goals. He had his own thriving law practice and required no assistance from me to maintain his professional reputation or financial stability. Our relationship developed slowly and transparently, with extensive discussions about career priorities, financial independence, and the importance of maintaining individual identities within a romantic partnership. James had witnessed the aftermath of my divorce and understood why trust came slowly for someone who had been systematically deceived by a spouse. The contrast between James and Ryan was stark and enlightening. Where Ryan had been charming and manipulative, James was steady and honest. Where Ryan had demanded admiration and support for his ambitions while showing little interest in mine, James was genuinely curious about my foundation work and marketing strategies. Most importantly, where Ryan had seen my success as a threat to his ego, James viewed it as an achievement to celebrate and support. Our relationship had reached the point where we were discussing marriage, but this time the conversation included detailed negotiations about prenuptial agreements, separate business entities, and protection of individual assets. The romantic idealism that had characterized my first marriage had been replaced by pragmatic planning, that would protect both of us from the kind of financial entanglement that had made my divorce from Ryan so complex. The legal framework we were developing for our potential marriage reflected lessons learned from helping other women protect themselves from economic abuse. Every asset would be clearly documented, every business relationship would be legally defined, and every financial decision would require mutual consent and transparency. This approach might have seemed cynical to outside observers, but it actually represented a more mature and sustainable foundation for partnership than the blind trust that had characterized my relationship with Ryan. True intimacy, I had learned, required security and autonomy rather than dependence and vulnerability. The professional recognition that had followed my divorce and business success had led to opportunities I couldn't have imagined during my marriage to Ryan. I was invited to serve on the boards of several Austin nonprofits, consulted with national real estate firms about marketing strategies, and spoke regularly at conferences about women's entrepreneurship and financial independence. The transformation from hidden partner to visible leader had required developing new skills in public speaking, media relations, and organizational management. The woman who had once been content to work behind the scenes creating Ryan's success had become comfortable being the face of her own achievements and advocating publicly for causes she believed in. One of the most rewarding aspects of my new visibility was the opportunity to mentor young women entering Austin's business community. I regularly spoke at UT's business school, sharing lessons about negotiation, strategic thinking, and the importance of maintaining individual identity within professional partnerships. These speaking engagements often attracted women who were struggling with situations similar to what I had experienced with Ryan. Talented professionals whose contributions were being minimized or exploited by partners who took credit for their work. The advice I offered was both practical and philosophical, emphasizing the importance of documentation, legal protection, and strategic planning. The message I consistently shared was that betrayal, while devastating, could become a catalyst for growth and empowerment if approached strategically rather than emotionally. The key was transforming victimization into education, using the experience of being underestimated as motivation to prove one's true capabilities. The annual conference I organized for the Emma Rodriguez Foundation had become one of Austin's premier events for professional women, attracting speakers and attendees from across Texas and beyond. The conference combined practical workshops on legal and financial protection with inspirational presentations about women who had transformed personal setbacks into professional triumphs. This year's keynote speaker was a federal judge who had divorced her prosecutor husband after discovering that he had been using information from her cases to benefit his private practice clients. Her story of rebuilding her career while pursuing disciplinary action against her ex-husband resonated powerfully with women who had experienced similar betrayals of trust and professional ethics. The conference also featured workshops on recognizing financial abuse, protecting intellectual property, and building support networks for women in transition. The practical information provided could help women avoid the kind of exploitation I had experienced while building strategies for achieving independence if their relationships or partnerships became untenable. The success of these educational programs had attracted attention from corporations and government agencies interested in promoting women's economic empowerment. The foundation had received grants to expand its services and develop online resources that could reach women in smaller communities where support services were limited. This expansion had led to consulting opportunities with national organizations working on domestic violence prevention and women's economic security. The expertise I had developed through personal experience and professional success was now being applied to systemic problems that affected millions of women facing similar challenges. The most unexpected outcome of my advocacy work was an invitation to testify before a congressional subcommittee examining economic abuse as a component of domestic violence. The opportunity to share my story and recommendations with federal policymakers represented the ultimate transformation of personal pain into public purpose. The testimony I delivered emphasized the need for better legal protections for women whose partners exploited their professional contributions while planning secret exits from marriage or business relationships. The recommendations I offered included requirements for financial transparency in marriage, stronger penalties for professional fraud, and expanded access to legal resources for women facing economic manipulation. The congressional appearance generated national media coverage that elevated both my personal profile and the Foundation's mission, leading to speaking invitations and consulting opportunities that extended far beyond Austin's business community. The woman who had once hidden behind Ryan's reputation was now being recognized as a national expert on women's economic empowerment and recovery from betrayal. As I reflected on the journey from discovering burgundy lipstick on Ryan's collar to testifying before Congress about economic abuse, the transformation seemed almost surreal. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy my sense of self-worth had become the foundation for achievements that exceeded anything I had accomplished during my marriage. The lesson I shared most frequently with women facing similar challenges was that the deepest wounds often revealed the greatest strengths. Ryan's betrayal had forced me to develop independence, strategic thinking, and advocacy skills that might never have emerged if our marriage had continued in its comfortable but limiting pattern. The burgundy lipstick that had marked the end of my life as Mrs. Ryan Rodriguez had also marked the beginning of my identity as Emma Rodriguez, entrepreneur, advocate, and inspiration to women who refuse to let betrayal define their futures. The stain that was meant to humiliate me had instead painted the path to empowerment, success, and purpose beyond anything I had imagined possible. Ryan's attempt to paint his conquest on his collar had backfired spectacularly, resulting in his reputation being painted red with scandal, fraud, and criminal conviction. Meanwhile, the woman he had underestimated had painted herself a new life in colors of success, independence, and meaningful contribution to causes larger than any individual relationship or business partnership. 5 years after that burgundy lipstick changed the trajectory of my existence, I stood at the altar of the historic Laguna Gloria overlooking Lady Bird Lake, preparing to marry James Mitchell in a ceremony that represented everything my first wedding had not. This time, I wasn't a young woman surrendering her identity to become someone's wife. I was Emma Rodriguez, a nationally recognized entrepreneur and advocate, choosing to share my established life with a man who celebrated rather than diminished my achievements. The guest list reflected the authentic community I had built since my divorce from Ryan. Diana Foster served as my matron of honor, representing the business partnership that had transformed both our careers and established us as Austin's premier luxury real estate team. Lisa Thompson, the attorney who had guided me through the darkest period of my life, stood among my bridesmaids alongside women from the foundation who had become genuine friends rather than mere networking contacts. James's family had embraced me with the warmth of people who understood that true partnership required mutual respect and individual strength. His mother, a retired federal judge, had become a mentor and friend, offering wisdom about maintaining professional identity within marriage and the importance of legal protections that preserved independence, even within loving relationships. The prenuptial agreement James and I had negotiated was more comprehensive than most business contracts, addressing everything from intellectual property rights to foundation governance to procedures for resolving conflicts without destroying either person's professional reputation. The document represented our commitment to transparency and equality, ensuring that neither of us could exploit the other's trust or contributions. The ceremony itself was intimate and meaningful, attended by people who had witnessed my transformation from betrayed wife to empowered leader. Instead of the elaborate spectacle that had characterized my wedding to Ryan, this celebration focused on authentic connection and shared values rather than social performance and impressive displays of wealth. My wedding dress was a custom creation by a local designer who specialized in sophisticated, non-traditional gowns for professional women. The deep emerald color reflected my personal style rather than conventional expectations, while the cut emphasized confidence and elegance rather than submissive femininity. This was the dress of a woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to command attention. James's vows included specific promises about supporting my foundation work, respecting my business decisions, and maintaining the kind of partnership that enhanced rather than constrained our individual ambitions. His words reflected months of discussion about what marriage meant to two established professionals who had no interest in traditional gender roles or economic dependence. My own vows acknowledged the journey that had brought me to this moment, including gratitude for the betrayal that had forced me to discover my true strength and potential. I promised James the kind of partnership I had learned to value: honest, supportive, and based on genuine appreciation for each other's capabilities, rather than need for completion or validation. The reception continued the theme of authentic celebration, rather than social obligation. Instead of a traditional seated dinner, we organized a series of conversation stations where guests could engage with topics that mattered to us: environmental law, women's economic empowerment, sustainable business practices, and community development. The evening felt more like an intellectual salon than a wedding reception, reflecting our priorities and interests. The most touching moment came when several women from the foundation presented a video tribute featuring testimonials from participants who had used the organization's resources to transform their own lives. These women spoke about finding courage to leave exploitative relationships, starting successful businesses, and developing the confidence to advocate for themselves in professional and personal settings. One testimonial came from a woman named Patricia, who had used foundation resources to document her husband's embezzlement from their joint business and secure a divorce settlement that allowed her to maintain control of the company she had built. Her story closely paralleled my own experience with Ryan, but her preparation had been more thorough and her transition smoother because of the guidance and resources the foundation provided. Another woman, Maria, described how foundation workshops had helped her recognize that her business partner was systematically undermining her contributions while taking credit for her innovations. Armed with documentation strategies and legal resources, she had successfully dissolved the partnership and launched her own consulting firm that was now thriving independently. These stories represented the true measure of my success, not just personal recovery from betrayal, but the creation of resources that helped other women avoid or overcome similar exploitation. The foundation had evolved from my individual healing process into a comprehensive support system that addressed systemic problems affecting thousands of women across Texas and beyond. The honeymoon James and I chose reflected our shared values and interests rather than conventional romantic expectations. We spent 2 weeks in Costa Rica, combining environmental research for his law practice with documentation of microfinance programs that supported women entrepreneurs in rural communities. The trip served as both personal celebration and professional development, demonstrating how our individual passions could complement each other. The microfinance programs we studied provided inspiration for expanding the foundation's services to include small business lending for women transitioning out of exploitative relationships. Many women who attended our workshops had excellent business ideas but lacked access to capital because their credit had been damaged by partners who had misused joint financial accounts. Upon returning to Austin, I began developing a loan program that would provide seed funding for women whose traditional financing options had been compromised by financial abuse. The program would combine business mentorship with financial support, helping women build sustainable enterprises that provided both income and independence. The loan program launched 6 months after my wedding, funded by donations from foundation, supporters, and a substantial contribution from my own investment portfolio. The first recipient was a woman whose ex-husband had destroyed her credit while stealing money from her freelance graphic design business. With foundation support, she was able to rebuild her client base and establish a profitable agency that now employed 3 other women. The success of individual loan recipients generated media attention that attracted additional funding and strategic partnerships with established microfinance organizations. Within 2 years, the foundation was operating one of the most successful women's business lending programs in the Southwest, with a loan repayment rate that exceeded traditional banking standards. The program's success reflected the careful screening and support systems we had developed, ensuring that borrowers received not just money, but comprehensive guidance about business planning, financial management, and legal protection. The holistic approach addressed the root causes of women's economic vulnerability rather than simply providing temporary assistance. My role in the foundation had evolved from founder to strategic visionary, working with a board of directors that included successful women from various industries who brought expertise in finance, law, education, and social services. The organization had grown beyond what any individual could manage alone, requiring sophisticated governance structures and professional management systems. The board meetings reminded me of the collaborative energy that had once characterized my work with Diana, but on a much larger scale and with multiple perspectives contributing to strategic decisions. The foundation had become a genuine partnership among women who shared common values while bringing diverse skills and experiences to our collective mission. Diana and I had also expanded our real estate partnership, opening a second office in Dallas, Houston, and considering opportunities in Dallas and San Antonio. Our success in Austin had attracted attention from luxury developers and international buyers who wanted access to our marketing expertise and market knowledge. The brand we had, built together, was becoming synonymous with sophistication and integrity in Texas luxury real estate. The expansion required careful planning to maintain the quality and personal service that had distinguished our work from larger, more impersonal real estate firms. We hired selectively, looking for agents who shared our commitment to ethical practices and client advocacy rather than simply pursuing maximum transaction volume. Our marketing campaigns continued to set industry standards for innovation and effectiveness, incorporating emerging technologies like augmented reality and artificial intelligence, while maintaining the personal touch that attracted discerning clients. The balance between cutting-edge techniques and traditional relationship building reflected the lesson I had learned about sustainable success requiring authenticity rather than just clever strategies. The professional recognition that accompanied our expansion included invitations to speak at national real estate conferences, consultations with luxury brands entering the Austin market, and profiles in business publications that positioned us as thought leaders in our industry. The visibility was gratifying, but also carried responsibility to maintain the standards that had earned our reputation. One unexpected benefit of our growing profile was the opportunity to influence industry practices around gender equity and ethical business conduct. Our success provided a platform for advocating changes in how real estate professionals were trained, compensated, and held accountable for their behavior toward clients and colleagues. The contrast between my current professional standing and the hidden role I had played in Ryan's business was striking and satisfying. Where I had once been an unnamed contributor to someone else's success, I was now recognized as a leader whose innovations influenced industry-wide practices. The transformation validated every decision I had made during the difficult process of rebuilding my life after discovering Ryan's betrayal. News of Ryan's continued legal troubles occasionally surfaced in Austin business circles, providing unwelcome reminders of the life I had escaped. His federal conviction for wire fraud had resulted in a 7-year prison sentence, but additional civil lawsuits from defrauded investors continued to accumulate, ensuring that his financial obligations would extend far beyond his incarceration. The details of Ryan's criminal enterprise revealed a level of desperation and moral bankruptcy that shocked even people who had witnessed his professional decline after our divorce. The man who had once been Austin's golden boy of luxury, real estate, had descended into elaborate fraud schemes that destroyed the retirement savings of elderly investors who trusted his reputation and charm. Sophia Chen had disappeared entirely from Austin's social and professional circles, apparently relocating to another state where her association with Ryan's scandals wouldn't follow her. According to mutual acquaintances, she had abandoned real estate entirely, and was working in an unrelated field under her maiden name, trying to rebuild a life free from the toxicity of her relationship with Ryan. The complete destruction of both their careers served as a cautionary tale about the long-term consequences of choosing deception over integrity. While I had used Ryan's betrayal as motivation for building something meaningful and sustainable, he had responded to professional challenges by escalating his dishonesty until criminal behavior became inevitable. The Foundation's educational programs often included case studies of financial fraud and professional misconduct, using anonymized versions of Ryan's story to illustrate how seemingly successful people could destroy everything through poor ethical choices. These presentations helped workshop participants understand the warning signs of partners who might be capable of similar betrayals. The workshops also emphasized the importance of maintaining individual professional identities and financial accounts even within loving marriages, using my own experience as an example of how quickly trust could be violated and how critical preparation could be for protecting oneself from exploitation. The most advanced workshop series I developed focused on what I called strategic partnership, teaching women how to structure business and personal relationships to maximize collaboration while minimizing vulnerability. The curriculum covered everything from contract negotiation to communication strategies to legal protection mechanisms. These workshops attracted professional women from across Texas and neighboring states, creating a network of alumni who supported each other's businesses and shared resources for continuing education. The community that emerged from foundation programs became a powerful force for advancing women's economic interests throughout the region. The annual Foundation Gala had evolved into one of Austin's premier charity events, attracting corporate sponsors and individual donors who supported our mission while enjoying sophisticated entertainment and networking opportunities. The event raised substantial funds while increasing awareness of economic abuse and women's empowerment issues. This year's gala featured a keynote address by a Supreme Court justice who spoke about the legal evolution of women's economic rights and the ongoing challenges facing women who experienced financial exploitation within marriage or business partnerships. Her presence elevated the Foundation's profile while reinforcing the serious policy implications of our advocacy work. The silent auction included artwork donated by local artists, vacation packages contributed by luxury travel companies, and professional services offered by Foundation supporters. The items reflected Austin's creative community while providing valuable resources that auction winners could use for business development or personal enrichment. The most popular auction item was a comprehensive business consultation package that I offered annually, including strategic planning, marketing development, and legal review services. The winning bidder typically received value far exceeding their contribution, while the Foundation benefited from both the auction proceeds and the publicity generated by the consultation process. As I reflected on the journey from discovering burgundy lipstick on Ryan's collar to hosting Supreme Court justices at Foundation events, the transformation seemed almost mythical in its scope and significance. The betrayal that had once threatened to destroy my sense of identity and purpose had become the catalyst for achievements that surpassed anything I had imagined possible during my first marriage. The lesson I shared most frequently with women facing similar challenges was that the deepest betrayals often revealed the greatest opportunities for growth and empowerment. Ryan's deception had forced me to develop skills, relationships, and perspectives that might never have emerged if our marriage had continued in its comfortable but limiting pattern. The burgundy lipstick that had marked the end of my life as a supportive wife had also marked the beginning of my identity as an independent leader, successful entrepreneur, and advocate for women's empowerment. The stain that was meant to humiliate me had instead painted the path to achievements that honored not just my own potential, but the potential of every woman who refused to let betrayal define her future. Ryan's attempt to mark his conquest had backfired so completely that his name was now associated with fraud and failure, while mine was connected with integrity and success. The reputation he had tried to paint red with scandal belonged to him alone, while I had painted myself a life filled with purpose, partnership, and meaningful contribution to causes larger than any individual relationship. The burgundy lipstick had indeed painted something red, but it wasn't my humiliation or defeat. It was the foundation for a legacy of empowerment that would outlast any marriage, any business partnership, and any individual achievement, creating lasting change for women who deserved better than the betrayal I had experienced and overcome. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out!